To those outside the Westminster jungle, he was little known, but to those within it, he was the creative force whose vision helped shape New Labour. Philip Gould was essentially a career pollster, but to Tony Blair, he was much more: a sounding board, philosopher, honest critic and friend. Lord Gould died at the weekend, aged 61, after a very public battle against cancer of the esophagus. Earlier I spoke to Tony Blair. I began by asking him what was Philip Gould's place in New Labour.
Philip was an indispensable part of the whole project of making the Labour Party electable, not just for one term, but so that you could win successive terms in office. And he was, if you like, not just the pollster and focus group person is to kind of diminish it. He was a strategist, really. And I used to find with Philip that the insights he would give me about public opinion, about where he thought the country would stand, were as good as anything I've ever seen in politics.
Did you like the idea of a focus group?
I think in its proper place. I mean, Philip was one of the people who came along when the Labour Party still sort of rather looked down its nose at all these, the new techniques that political parties use. What he did do was say, if you're going to devise policy, at least have a bit of evidence of what people are thinking. And sometimes the best way to do that is not a quantitative poll, where they show you sort of 70% think this or 60% think that, but actually where you're talking to people in depth about their experiences, what they feel, what they think.
So his focus group dog didn't wag the tail of the Labour Party?
No, it definitely didn't. But it would be a total underestimation of Philip to think of him as just a sort of pollster and focus group person. As I say, he was a strategist. He understood big trends in politics. He looked at things in a big way. He was a philosopher as much as a political analyst. I mean, and he also had deep personal convictions. I mean, Philip was a huge believer in social justice, in representing the British people, and in the Labour Party's place as able to govern for a significant enough period of time that you could make a difference.
He worked, I mean, monumental hours. Do you think that played a part in his cancer?
I really don't know. I mean, he was as all the great people in those positions are, I mean, he was mildly obsessive. In fact,
hugely obsessive.
Yeah. I mean, when he was determined on something, he was determined on it. But it's really important to understand this about Philip, because then I think during this last period, when facing death, I think the true nature of his character came through. He was, you know, he wasn't in it as a job. It was a vocation and a belief.
You and he took a risk, in a sense, in making Labour a party of Europe, a pro-European party. And yet, just as I'm suggesting to you that New Labour has faded, so too has any question really of any great devotion to Europe.
No, again, I think there's a lot of people for whom Europe and being part of the European Union and being a leading player in the European Union is an article of faith, actually. I mean, certainly for me, I still remain absolutely sure that Britain's place is with Europe, and Philip was, you know, ardently pro-European.
When did you last visit him?
I've been visiting him regularly over these last months, and I visited him yesterday. But I think the thing about Philip is that in this last period of his life, when he was facing death and knew he was facing death, his qualities as really a leader of people came out, and he had this extraordinary sense that he was going to reconcile himself to the mistakes he'd made in life, to the relationships he had, that he was going to use this as this period of extraordinary, remarkable emotional growth, as he used to call it. And he did. And of all the things that he has done in his life, I don't think there is anything quite as remarkable as the way he faced death and took it not just with extraordinary dignity and courage, but left those of us behind feeling great hope about the future as a result of the way that he did that.